They say the devil's in the details, but I've always found him lounging in the small stuff, like a half-folded sock under the bed, or the way someone suddenly forgets how to laugh at your jokes. For me, it all started with a garage door opener and a very unfortunate Tuesday. Now I know, not exactly the stuff of mystery novels, but stay with me. It was mid-September, one of those weird days when the sun's still shining like it's July but the wind's already got October on its mind. I'd come home early from work, not for any noble reason. I'd simply had enough of pretending to care about why a tractor's left axle was misaligned, while Dale from purchasing played Sudoku instead of ordering parts. I told my boss I had a dentist appointment. I don't know why the dentist is always the go-to excuse. Probably because no one wants to ask follow-up questions about gums. Anyway, I pulled into our driveway in my dented Ford that smells faintly of stale coffee and dry sarcasm, and pressed the garage door button. Nothing. Pressed it again. Nothing. Now, we don't live in some sprawling mansion or high-tech fortress. It's a regular suburban home in the outer rings of Indianapolis. Two-car garage. Vinyl siding. Hopes and dreams slowly depreciating with the property value. The opener had worked fine that morning when I left. But now, dead as disco. Mildly annoyed, I parked on the street and walked around back. The side gate was unlocked, which I found odd. Not suspicious, just odd. Kelly was usually the sort who double-checked locks like we were housing national secrets. But fine. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she suddenly developed trust in humanity. Stranger things have happened. Like the entire existence of reality TV. I opened the back door, stepped inside, and heard music playing. Not the kind you expect to hear when someone's home cleaning or cooking or living. It wasn't cheerful. It was bizarrely specific. A playlist of late 90s Canadian jazz pop. I know this because one of the songs, Swim by Feist, was once on a CD I accidentally left in Kelly's car 12 years ago and got mocked for so mercilessly that she renamed it Henry's Sad Boy Mix. So imagine my surprise hearing it floating from the living room like it had been waiting all this time to come back and haunt me. I called out, "Kelly?" No answer. I kicked off my shoes, padded into the living room, and found no one there. Just that song, and a glass of water on the coffee table. I muted the speaker and stood there for a second. That uneasy feeling? Yeah, it was creeping in, but I still wasn't thinking anything dramatic. Maybe Kelly was in the bathroom. Maybe she was upstairs on a Zoom call. I wandered into the kitchen to grab a drink. That's when I noticed the calendar. Now, Kelly has this habit of decorating her monthly calendar like it's an arts and crafts project. Colored markers, themed stickers, motivational quotes from people who were probably paid way too much to write them. And there, right on today's date, was a sticker of a duck wearing sunglasses and the word Operation Citrus written in bold green Sharpie. Operation Citrus. What in the mildly zesty hell? The funny thing is, when you live with someone long enough, you start to build this subconscious glossary of all their weirdness. You know their codes, their shorthand, their quirks. But Operation Citrus was new. Too new. And far too organized for Kelly, who once labeled our tax folders Money Sadness, Part 1 and 2. Now I was interested. I stood there staring at that duck sticker like it owed me an explanation when I heard something. A thud from the garage, which was weird, considering, dead garage door. I walked to the laundry room and tried the inner garage door. Locked. Another oddity. Kelly never locks that one. I grabbed the spare key from the drawer and turned the knob, half expecting to find her reorganizing Christmas decorations or cursing at a dead flashlight. Instead, I opened the door to find the most beautifully stupid thing I've ever seen. A miniature stage. A stage, Henry. In your garage. It was no bigger than a camping tent, made of plywood and Christmas lights, with a curtain fashioned from what I later realized was our old dining room tablecloths. And standing behind it, looking like a deer caught mid-shuffle, was a man wearing a gold lame blazer and holding a ukulele. He froze. I froze. We were a tableau of confusion. "You're not the florist," he said, as if that clarified anything. "No," I replied. "And this isn't a flower shop." There was a pause, then a noise behind the curtain. And out stepped Kelly, holding what appeared to be a clipboard and wearing the kind of fake smile that usually only shows up in hostage videos. "Henry," she said a little too brightly. "You're home early." "Oh, I gathered that." "And you're in a garage theater?" She sighed. "Okay, so, this is a little weird. I'd go with very." She gestured around like a magician mid-reveal. This was supposed to be a surprise. Well, you've certainly succeeded. Gold blazer guy, who introduced himself, absurdly, as Trevor with a V, had apparently been working with Kelly on what she called a conceptual neighborhood performance art project designed to challenge suburban assumptions. Also, Trevor added, to heal emotional rifts between star-crossed lovers through interpretive song. Interpretive song, I repeated, blinking. Henry, it's performance therapy, Kelly said, as if this was something that happens in garages across the Midwest. Now, I wasn't born yesterday, or the day before. I didn't need a forensic team to tell me that Trevor with a V was not just her creative partner. There was an energy between them. The way she smiled too tightly. The fact that she never mentioned anything remotely resembling a garage-based musical therapy project. Also, the ukulele. No man in his right mind carries a ukulele unless he's either being ironic or inappropriate. I see, I said, looking at them both. Operation Citrus makes a lot more sense now. Kelly paled. You saw the calendar. I did. I also remember a time when you said interpretive art was just a way for people to avoid getting real jobs. But hey, maybe I've misunderstood your artistic evolution. Trevor started to speak, but I held up a hand. Please, don't. Unless you're about to play closing time in falsetto, I really don't think I can take it. I left the garage, walked back inside, and sat down on the couch. The ridiculousness of it all just washed over me. Not rage, not devastation, just this numbing cocktail of disbelief and tragic amusement. A garage stage, a ukulele, a duck sticker. I mean, come on. When Kelly finally walked in, alone, she sat down across from me like a child waiting for a dentist to confirm a cavity. So, she started. Oh no, let's not do the usual, I said. Let's not do the tearful confession or the half-hearted denial. Let's just acknowledge what happened for what it is, an interpretive disaster. She gave a small, almost embarrassed laugh. I didn't plan for it to happen. Most people don't, I said. But some people also don't plan musical theater in their garage. I was unhappy. Sure, I said. But you know what I did when I was unhappy last winter? I bought a punching bag and developed a mild addiction to pistachios. I didn't, build a stage. She didn't argue. There was nothing left to argue. And that, my friend, was how it started. With a broken garage door, an undercover stage production, and a man in gold lame who thought he was subtle. Turns out, the details weren't just where the devil was hiding. They were where he built his whole set. Trevor with a V was not someone you forgot easily. That much became clear roughly 20 seconds into meeting him. Not because he said anything profound or particularly clever. Actually, the opposite, but because he had a tendency to stand just a few inches closer than polite society recommends. And he layered 2 scarves like he thought he was escaping a fashion-related hostage situation. That evening, after Kelly delivered what I'll generously call her explanation, Trevor lingered in our driveway like a man waiting for a cab that would never come. He seemed to be under the impression we might all sit down and process our feelings over herbal tea and interpretive marionette work. Instead, I told him our garage was closed for renovations until further notice, and he wandered off in the general direction of his scooter. Yes, of course he had a scooter, humming something suspiciously close to Enya. Kelly didn't try to follow him. She just hovered near the door like she was unsure whether she was supposed to apologize or invite me to a trust fall. I told her I had a headache and watched her nod like that made sense. Over the next few days, she didn't bring up the garage stage or Trevor again. It was like we were both participating in some mutual unspoken agreement to pretend the weirdest thing that had ever happened in our marriage didn't happen. The jazz pop playlist was turned off, the gold blazer was nowhere to be seen, and the calendar got mysteriously replaced with a new one featuring quotes from CEOs and stock photos of people smiling in business meetings. The tension was not so much cut it with a knife, as it was slice it with passive-aggressive glances and over-enthusiastic vacuuming. I didn't confront her directly, not because I was afraid or confused or some tragic soap opera character. I just wanted to watch. I figured if she was going to lie, she should have the full stage to do it on, and I would sit front row, program in hand. Kelly, for her part, started behaving like she was trying to win Employee of the Month in a job she didn't know she had. She began asking me about my day, complimenting my shirt choices, and even offering to help me reorganize the garage, which was now empty except for a pile of dismantled stage parts and a single glittery shoe that didn't belong to either of us. One evening, while we were watching a rerun of a show we both used to like before irony ruined it, Kelly said, "So, I was thinking, maybe we could take a weekend trip. Just the two of us." "To where?" I asked. "A couple's retreat for people who accidentally build theater sets during affairs." She didn't laugh, but she also didn't deny it. She just offered a faint smile and said, "You've always had such a dry sense of humor." "Thanks. I try to keep it low humidity," I replied. She dropped the subject. But the real fun started when I realized the garage fiasco was only the tip of a very polite, very strangely organized iceberg. On Sunday, I got curious. Not about Kelly. That part was already settled in my mind. I was curious about Trevor. Because, frankly, the man intrigued me. People like him usually exist only in coffee shop corners and adult pottery classes. Yet here he was, in my garage, with props and a set list. I remembered he mentioned something about a creative commune during his awkward departure, which I assumed was either a metaphor for his group chat or a real thing involving compost toilets. A quick online search brought me to a Facebook group called Living Out Loud, the Mindful Collective of East Marion. The banner image was, of course, a group of barefoot adults in a circle holding crystals. There he was, Trevor with AV, listed as emotional cartographer/stage artisan. I'm not making that up. Emotional cartographer. His most recent post was a photo of our garage, tagged rehearsal space, Suburban Series Volume 2. Secrets in the structure. Now, I don't consider myself a particularly vindictive man, but I do believe in curiosity as a guiding principle. So I clicked on the post. The caption read, "In partnership with an undisclosed muse, this space has birthed a piece of raw, unfiltered truth-telling. A dialogue of longing, risk, and domestic reinvention. Rehearsals ongoing. House lights dimming soon. Undisclosed muse." Well, naturally, I made an account. Under the name Marv. Marv liked community theater, fermented beet juice, and asking way too many questions. I joined the group and commented, "Sounds fascinating. Will this be a ticketed event?" Trevor responded within minutes. "Hey Marv. Thanks for your energy. This particular installation is invite only for those directly affected by the domestic landscape being explored." Domestic landscape. I had never felt more personally insulted and simultaneously impressed by a euphemism in my life. The next day, I noticed Kelly had started dressing differently. Not drastically, just subtle shifts. More flowy pants. A vest that looked like it was designed by someone who hated structure. And scarves. Scarves in temperatures that did not call for scarves. I knew what this meant. She wasn't just dabbling in a little jazz art adultery. She was joining his commune. Now, most men would probably be devastated by this. I wasn't. I was fascinated. Because Kelly, bless her organized little heart, had never once shown interest in anything remotely communal. She used to refer to potlucks as food roulette and once threatened to write a Yelp review because a restaurant gave her paper straws. And yet here she was, attending open-air meditations and suddenly replacing our almond milk with oat. By Thursday, I had enough pieces to begin connecting the puzzle. Kelly wasn't just seeing Trevor. She was becoming him, or at least a less glittery, more spreadsheet-literate version. That night, while she was upstairs doing whatever it is people do during intentional silence, I went back to her calendar. The new one. It didn't have duck stickers, but it had a post-it. Rehearsal, Trevor's place. Bring energy. It was underlined. Twice. I texted my coworker Jim and asked if he could swing by that evening with his drone. Jim, a man with far too much money and too little supervision, has a fleet of drones and the enthusiasm of someone who peaked in high school shop class. I gave him the address I found on the Facebook groups about section and told him to do a flyby around 8 p.m. I don't regret this decision at all. The next morning, Jim handed me a flash drive with a smirk and said, "Henry, my friend, you owe me a beer and an explanation." The video was simple. The backyard of a small house with folding chairs arranged in a circle, fairy lights strung between laundry lines, and a group of people sitting cross-legged. At the center, Trevor stood in front of a whiteboard with the words, "Healing Through Honesty," written in purple marker. And there she was, Kelly, wearing a tunic that looked suspiciously like our old shower curtain, nodding solemnly as Trevor spoke about emotional gardening. He asked each person to share their truth seed. Kelly's turn came, and I turned the volume up. She stood, took a breath, and said, "My truth is, I've been living a lie, and it's time to turn the page." The group clapped. I paused the video and stared at the screen. So, to summarize, my wife had not only cheated, but she joined a group therapy circle led by a man in 2 scarves, confessed some vague poetic version of her betrayal, and applauded herself for it. I closed the laptop. Kelly walked in a minute later, holding 2 mugs of something that definitely wasn't coffee. "Want to try my new dandelion root tea?" she asked. I smiled. "Sure. Let's toast to new beginnings." And that was the moment I knew exactly what I was going to do next. But I'd let her enjoy her tea first. She earned it. She really earned it. There are people who cry when they find out their spouse has been sneaking around. Others yell or dramatically toss their wedding ring into a body of water. I opened Excel. Not immediately, of course. I gave it a day. Let Kelly hum her way through another mindfulness podcast while drinking something called activated charcoal water, like she'd joined a cult run by Whole Foods. She still hadn't brought up Trevor. I hadn't brought it up either. We were now a couple existing in what I describe as emotional Switzerland. Neutral, awkward, and pretending not to notice the war happening at the border. But I needed a plan. And plans, in my opinion, work better with tabs, color coding, and a few conditional formatting formulas. So, yes, I sat down at my computer and opened a blank workbook titled Project Citrus, Exit Strategy. The tabs were labeled as follows: Timeline of Deceit, Commune Activities Log, Financial Reallocations, Backup Evidence, Video, Retirement of Marital Nonsense. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it organized? Impeccably. Under Timeline of Deceit, I began logging events starting from the date Trevor appeared in my garage like a misplaced magician. Every activity, calendar note, wardrobe change, and scarf count went into that spreadsheet. I even tracked when she started using the word aligned to describe her mood instead of just saying she was fine. That was week 3, for those keeping track. Under Commune Activities Log, I cross-referenced her social media posts, that Facebook group Trevor ran, and the time she suddenly had night journaling sessions with a woman named Petra. Petra, by the way, once posted a photo of herself next to a burning bundle of sage with the caption, "Cleansing my timeline." I had no idea what that meant, but I gave it a red flag anyway. Then came the financials. Financial reallocations wasn't dramatic, it was honest. I started moving money from our joint accounts into an entirely separate one under my name. Nothing illegal, just the kind of housekeeping one does when their spouse starts investing in group vision boards and referring to a grown man as her emotional lighthouse. Kelly didn't notice. Or if she did, she was too preoccupied trying to decode the latest message from her dream cycle. I noticed she'd begun keeping a dream journal. It was purple, had a moon sticker on it, and included phrases like swimming through golden syrup and the trees whispered Trevor's name. I'm not sure if that was meant to be poetic or disturbing. Possibly both. The best part was the backup evidence tab, where I compiled the drone footage, screenshots of the Facebook group, and several audio recordings of her healing monologues that she'd uploaded to a podcast platform no one asked for. I called it Trevor Talks, and it had a grand total of 6 listeners, 3 of whom were probably other people in the commune pretending to care. Now, you may be wondering, what's the end goal here? What is Henry trying to achieve exactly? Revenge? Not exactly. Exposing her? Tempting, but no. I wasn't interested in some public confrontation. I was interested in something far more satisfying: administrative chaos. See, Kelly prided herself on being the planner in our relationship, the scheduler, the list maker. Her Google Calendar had more colors than a pride parade. But while she was busy aligning her chakras with strangers who smelled like patchouli and unpaid taxes, I was turning her world of spreadsheets and order into a slowly unraveling ball of confusion. It began small. I changed our Netflix profile names. Hers, originally Kelly Red Heart, became Shared Account, Shared Lies. Mine became Definitely Not Watching with Trevor. Then I started changing her calendar invites. Nothing malicious, just enough to mess with the rhythm. Her Thursday sound bath event mysteriously shifted to weekly trash audit. Her community council prep suddenly became Trevor Talk rehearsal, socks optional. She didn't notice for 2 full days. Then came the printer incident. Kelly went to print her mindfulness workbook and instead got 30 copies of a flyer I designed in Word that said, "Seeking emotional clarity? Try honesty. Now available in your own kitchen. Ask for Henry." She didn't say a word. Just stood there, printer humming like it was in on the joke, and slowly fed each page into the shredder like she was auditioning for a new lifestyle in espionage. By the end of the week, Kelly finally asked me, "Have you noticed anything strange?" "You mean besides the man in our garage doing jazz hands about truth?" "I'm serious." "So am I." She paused, clearly weighing whether to continue. I think maybe I'm going through a shift." I nodded. "Well, shifts are good. But you might want to shift your attention to the joint checking account before we hit empty and start writing checks in emotional currency." Her mouth opened, then closed. No comment. That Sunday, she invited Petra and another commune member over. A man named Wade. Wade wore a leather necklace and introduced himself as a sacred listener. I made it exactly 11 minutes into their discussion about eco-spiritual recalibration before excusing myself to go alphabetize the spices. For the record, we don't have many. It was mostly salt in different containers. Still took 30 minutes. Later, I heard Petra say something like, "Have you shared your journey with him? Your truth?" And Kelly responded, "Not in the way I want to yet." At that point, it was clear. She still hadn't admitted anything. Not to me. Not directly. Her version of confession involved group hugs, homemade kombucha, and emotionally vague word salads. That night, I logged the exchange into the spreadsheet under verbal dodges. I also created a sixth tab, Exit Events Planning. This one was my favorite. It included a list of minor, meticulously timed actions that would slowly make my departure the most organized, emotionally indifferent, and irritatingly flawless exit in the history of disappointing marriages. Here's a sample from the list. Cancel her yoga mat subscription, effective next cycle. Leave note. I believe you've already stretched this relationship far enough. Schedule a moving van for a Tuesday afternoon, the day she has her nonverbal group meditation. Leave behind exactly one item, a small whiteboard with the message, "This was your stage." I just exited left. Print copies of the drone footage and mail them to Trevor labeled, "Behind the scenes." I wasn't planning to yell. I wasn't even planning to argue. I was planning to exit like a data breach, quiet, thorough, and with just enough disruption to leave an impression. I had everything sorted, except for one small thing. Kelly, for all her vague language and whimsical nonsense, was still acting like we were fine. Like maybe, if she said enough vague affirmations and poured enough flax milk into the blender, this would all smooth over. So, naturally, I scheduled a marriage counseling appointment. Not because I wanted to fix anything, because I knew she'd never expect it. I picked a guy who specialized in conflict resolution through charts and behavioral matrices. Kelly hated charts unless she made them. When I told her about the session, her face twitched. "You want counseling?" I nodded. "I want clarity." She hesitated. "Okay, but I think we should prepare by journaling our intentions." "Oh, I have," I said, sipping my coffee. "In 6 tabs." Her smile faded. The session was next Thursday. I planned to bring my laptop. It was time to present the data. The waiting room smelled like carpet glue and regret. You could tell this wasn't the kind of place people came to get better. It was the kind they came to confirm that things were as bad as they suspected. A fake plant stood in the corner, holding up a motivational sign that read, "Progress is a process." Kelly stared at it like it was going to open up and offer her enlightenment. I stared at the wall clock, which ticked louder than any normal clock should, like it knew we were all lying to ourselves just by being there. She wore something made of linen. Lots of it. Like she'd lost a fight with a sewing machine that had strong opinions about minimalism. I showed up in my usual jeans, t-shirt, a well-worn hoodie, and a spreadsheet file named Mutual Transparency Initiative stored on a flash drive in my pocket. The therapist, a middle-aged man named Craig, which felt both too casual and too forced, had decorated his office in the style of IKEA clearance corner. 2 chairs with suspicious cushions. 1 couch that probably came from someone else's breakup. A desk with a Himalayan salt lamp that hadn't earned its paycheck in years. "Henry." "Kelly," Craig said, smiling like we were 2 toddlers about to share a toy. "Glad you could come in. I just want you both to know this is a safe space." Kelly nodded with all the sincerity of a person who's memorized talking points. "We're really open to honest communication." I nodded, too. I've prepared a few visuals. Craig blinked. You brought visuals? Kelly asked, suddenly less serene and more moderator at a town hall meeting. I find visuals help cut down on the part where people pretend they forgot what they said 2 days ago. Kelly let out a small sigh, but Craig smiled like this was the spice his Thursday needed. Well, as long as everyone's open to the process. I inserted the flash drive into his laptop, and there it was, the spreadsheet. Each tab labeled, each cell filled with the quiet, relentless power of evidence gathered by a man who had stopped arguing a long time ago and started documenting instead. Craig leaned forward. So, Henry, why don't you walk us through what we're seeing here? Sure. This first tab is a timeline of notable changes. You'll notice that week 5 aligns with Trevor's first confirmed presence in our garage. Week 6 begins the scarf phase. By week 8, she'd begun replacing conjunctions in her sentences with the word alignment. Kelly exhaled sharply. This is ridiculous. No. Ridiculous would be me pretending like I didn't listen to your podcast episode called Sage Against the Machine, where you and Trevor discussed this spiritual tension of shared living. Craig raised his eyebrows. It was a metaphor, Kelly said quickly. For what? I asked. The part where you said, sometimes I look at the person across the breakfast table and feel like I'm sharing a sink with a stranger? Or the part where Trevor sang a freestyle song about freedom and socks? She folded her arms. We came here to work on things. Great, I said, clicking to the next tab. This one's titled Communication Breakdown, and it shows the decline in meaningful conversations compared to the increase in community meetings involving ceremonial bowls. Craig cleared his throat. Let's pause there for a second. No need. I have charts. Henry, Kelly interrupted, trying to smile. You're turning this into some sort of presentation? I said, yes. Because that's how you prefer things, right? Curated, structured, and dressed up as insight so you don't have to actually say anything direct. You're excellent at that. Speaking in emotional PowerPoint. Kelly turned to Craig. Do you see what I mean? This is the kind of behavior that makes it impossible to connect. Oh, we're connecting now, I said. This is the most attention I've had from you in months. Craig tried again. Maybe we can redirect this energy. Kelly, what would you say your main goal is today? Kelly straightened in her chair, and I knew what was coming. She had rehearsed this, probably while lighting a candle made of recycled hope. I want to rediscover how we relate to each other without relying on our past assumptions. Craig nodded slowly, like he was pretending this meant something. Okay, that's an important goal. I raised my hand. I'd like to point out the contradiction in that statement and ask for a ruling. Craig held up a calming palm. Let's try to focus less on contradiction and more on mutual understanding. Sure, I said, clicking to the tab titled Energy Shifts and Other Nonsense. It included quotes from Kelly's podcast, direct comparisons to things she'd said to me during arguments, and a column titled Words Used Instead of Just Saying Sorry. Craig's expression drifted from amused to deeply tired. Kelly reached for her bag and pulled out a notebook. Maybe I should read something I wrote. Oh, please do, I said, reclining slightly. I assume it rhymes. She opened it and began. When the soul turns sideways. Nope, I said, standing up. Nope. If the soul's doing gymnastics, we're not in the same class. Craig tried again. Henry, can you tell us what it is you need from Kelly right now? I need her to stop hiding behind her dream journal and her emotional containers and just admit the obvious. That Trevor isn't her creative partner. That this whole commune thing is a boutique escape hatched from a life she got bored of, but didn't have the guts to leave honestly. Kelly frowned. You think I'm dishonest? I laughed. I think you've used the phrase reimagining truth 4 times in 1 week without actually telling it. Craig turned to her. Kelly, have you and Trevor been romantically involved? There it was. A real question. She hesitated. And in that second, I swear I could hear the spreadsheet in my mind auto-filling the cell under denial. I don't think that's the right framework, she said. Craig blinked. It's not a framework. It's a yes or no. Kelly closed her notebook. Fine. Yes. We kissed. Once. But that wasn't the point. Was the point to construct a full garage theater and debut your new identity as woman who feels deeply but shares selectively? Craig made a note, probably. Couple needs follow-up session or adult chaperone. Kelly rubbed her temples. I didn't want to hurt you. But you just didn't want to stop either, right? Because it felt meaningful. Because it wasn't boring. Because it wasn't me. Silence filled the room in the way only truths people already knew can manage. Craig leaned back. I think we've uncovered some important things today. Agreed, I said, collecting my flash drive. Kelly watched me with that look she gives when she's about to ask if we can deconstruct the moment. I didn't give her the chance. I'll be moving out next week, I said. Tuesday, while you're doing your deep listening circle with Petra. I figured it would align with your new chapter motif. Kelly didn't say anything. Craig cleared his throat. Would you both be open to one more session? I shook my head. No need. I already wrote the final tab. It's titled Done. The Tuesday morning I left, Kelly was exactly where I expected her to be. Out back with her commune group participating in something called Silent Garden Movement. From the window, I watched 6 adults in mismatched linen walk slowly around potted plants, occasionally freezing in place like someone had yelled, "Museum exhibit." Wade was leading them, naturally. Wade, who once told me eye contact was a form of consensual energy exchange. I waved from inside. He didn't see me, or maybe he was mid-freeze. Either way, it was a beautiful time to leave. My exit was not a dramatic one. No speeches, no door slams, no tragic playlist queued up for the drive. I packed everything I needed the night before into a storage pod I had scheduled weeks in advance. The pod was a delightful invention, clean, quiet, and emotionally neutral. Just like me, apparently, according to Kelly's last written reflection. She'd left it on the coffee table the day after therapy. A piece of paper, double-spaced, with the title Reflections on Structural Disconnection. She didn't say it was for me, but she hovered around while I read it, which I assume was her version of direct communication. In it, she explained how we'd fallen out of sync with the energetic tides of our shared space, and how she was exploring new relational containers that allowed for creative fluidity. I translated that as, I cheated, but I didn't enjoy feeling judged, so I'm going to call it a search for authenticity. The only thing missing was a flowchart. Anyway, I read it, nodded, and placed it gently in the recycling bin, right between a flyer for a local drum circle and an unopened community co-op newsletter. I didn't tell her the exact day I was leaving, not to be sneaky, but because I didn't think she deserved the performance. She'd already had plenty of those in the garage. Besides, I wanted my last moment in the house to be mine. No tension, no fake apologies, no weird monologues about emotional compost. Before I walked out, I did one last loop through the place. It's funny what you notice when you know you're seeing it all for the last time. Like how every room had become a shrine to hobbies she picked up and abandoned. There was the easel from her abstract vulnerability painting phase, the dusty set of tuning forks from that week she believed frequencies could cure back pain, and the stack of books with titles like Radical Stillness for Chaotic Hearts. The only thing of mine left on the shelves was a coffee mug that said, World's Okayest Husband. I left it behind. I figured it belonged to the property now. When the pod door slid shut, I felt no grand wave of emotion. Mostly relief. And also a small amount of satisfaction that I'd remembered to cancel our subscription to the Organic Sock of the Month Club. She'd figure that out eventually. Hopefully during her next full moon ritual. My new place was a small townhouse on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, but functional and devoid of people who quote roomy during disagreements. I didn't rush to unpack. I sat on the floor, opened my laptop, and renamed the spreadsheet one final time. The end of the linen era. 2 days later, Kelly emailed me. Subject line, energy check-in. She'd apparently noticed I was gone and wanted to know how I was navigating the energetic transition into autonomy. That was her actual phrase. She also attached a digital collage of overlapping hands, flowers, and someone meditating in front of a mountain. I replied, energy checked. Transition successful. Thanks for the JPEG. She didn't reply for a while. A week maybe. I assumed she was processing it through a drum ceremony or journaling about her reclaimed spaciousness. Eventually, she sent another message, shorter this time. Are you open to one last conversation? In person? Now, in my head, I imagined a lot of things. Maybe she was going to apologize without using the word construct. Maybe she wanted closure. Or maybe she just needed to make sure I didn't take the camping chairs. I did. They were mine. We agreed to meet at the park near the community center. Neutral ground. Public enough that no one would try to initiate an emotional role-play exercise. She arrived on time, wearing something that could only be described as vaguely coastal. No shoes. Beads. A wide-brim hat that didn't match the season. I brought my truth stones, she said, holding up a small pouch. I brought a folding chair, I said, unfolding it. Guess we both came prepared. She sat on a bench and looked at me with that same searching expression I'd seen 100 times before. Except now, it looked more like she was trying to decide if I had an aura worth analyzing. I just wanted to thank you, she started, for handling this with grace. Spreadsheets are very grounding, I replied. She smiled like that was supposed to be charming. I know it wasn't fair. What I did. You mean the affair? Her smile tightened. That's one way to frame it. It's the accurate way. She nodded. I thought I was finding something real. Something missing. And instead, you found a guy who writes ukulele songs about inner conflict and leads workshops on conscious eye movement. She didn't defend him. That was progress. I think part of me believed if I changed everything around me, I wouldn't have to look at what I actually wanted. And what do you actually want? I asked. She was quiet for a second, then said, I don't know, but I know I don't want to keep pretending. Well, I said, you've got a head start on that. I haven't seen you pretend to care about my opinion in months. She looked down. Do you think we were ever happy? For real. We were fine. Which is underrated, by the way. People chase euphoric nonsense and forget how hard it is just to be fine with someone for a long time. She took a deep breath, which I assumed was about to lead into some spoken word apology or metaphor involving rivers. But instead, she surprised me. I'm sorry, not for wanting something else, but for not being honest when it started. I should have said something instead of doing whatever that was. You mean the Jazz Hands Garage Festival? She winced. Yeah, that. I appreciated the honesty, late as it was. I'm not mad anymore, I said. But I don't want to circle back. Not in 6 months. Not when Trevor finds his next muse. Not after the summer solstice cleanses your inbox. She laughed. A real one, not the performative kind she used in front of her commune. Fair, she said. I guess I just didn't expect you to handle it like this. Like what? Like, quietly. Systematically. Almost surgically. Well, I said, standing up. Sometimes the most satisfying exit is the one with a checklist. We didn't hug. We didn't linger. I folded up the chair, nodded once, and walked away. She called out just once. Henry. Yeah. I hope you meet someone who makes spreadsheets with you, instead of about you. I smiled. Me too. 2 months after leaving Kelly, my living room still had the pleasant emptiness of a space where no one had ever organized a drum circle. I had 1 chair, 1 desk, 1 bed, and 0 linen wall hangings. Everything in my new place had sharp edges and logical functions. The lamp was just a lamp. It didn't symbolize inner light or channel forgotten ancestors. It just illuminated whatever I needed to read, usually emails or the occasional customer review of power tools I had no intention of buying. My evenings were quiet, not because I was brooding or listening to rain playlists while staring out the window, but because I didn't have to interpret anyone's mood based on their incense choices. I'd gone back to my normal routine. Work, laundry, laughing at online reviews written by people who think toasters are conspiracies. No spreadsheets needed anymore, at least not for emotional inventory. Then Kelly sent another message. This time it wasn't titled anything poetic. It just said hi. The body of the email was as minimal as the subject. A few lines. No quotes. No references to energetic alignment or soul elasticity. Just her saying she'd been thinking about our last conversation and wanted to say she appreciated my honesty and hoped I was doing well. I stared at it for a minute. Not because I was emotionally compromised, but because I was genuinely impressed. She'd used complete sentences and refrained from attaching a photo collage of healing crystals. I typed a reply. Glad you're well. I'm doing fine. Still not interested in joining your podcast. Then I deleted it. Not out of bitterness. There wasn't any of that left, but because the moment didn't really require a response. It was like a bonus scene in a movie that had already ended. Mildly interesting, not essential. A week later, I ran into someone from the commune. Not Trevor. Not Wade. A woman named Brina, who once gave me a pamphlet titled Authentic Breathing for Relational Repair. She recognized me in the aisle at the office supply store while I was picking up printer ink like a man who didn't need group consensus to process emotion. Henry, she said, like she'd summoned me with wind chimes. It's good to see you in the wild. I considered correcting her, but decided against it. You too. I'm guessing you're here for laminated affirmations. She smiled like I was halfway to enlightenment. We're planning a closure ritual for the spring equinox. Kelly's been very reflective lately. That's great, I said. I've been very into sleeping 8 hours and not being emotionally cornered in my own kitchen. So we're all growing. Brina didn't seem offended. In fact, she looked oddly pleased. She's changed a lot, she said, leaning in like we were exchanging secrets and not just trying to avoid the sound of someone testing label makers behind us. Less performance. More presence. That's lovely, I said. Let me know if she starts paying rent in truth instead of metaphor. We parted ways with the kind of nod two people give each other when they both know exactly how ridiculous their shared history was but aren't ready to laugh about it together. A few days later, I got a letter in the mail. Not a digital message. An actual letter. Envelope. Stamp. Handwriting that looked suspiciously like someone trying very hard to seem casual. It was from Kelly. Inside was a short note and a printout. The note said, "Thought you might appreciate the data." The printout was a chart. A real one. Titled, Lessons Learned, Post-Divorce Reflection. There were 3 columns, what I believed, what I discovered, and what I'll probably deny again. Some entries. I believed I was stuck. I discovered I was mostly distracted. I'll probably deny this if asked in public. I believed Henry didn't see me. I discovered he saw more than I did. I'll probably tell people we just grew apart. I believed performance was healing. I discovered therapy isn't theater. I'll probably still enjoy a good costume now and then. I laughed. Genuinely. There was no ask in the letter. No, let's meet again. Or are you seeing anyone? Just that chart and the note. It was the most honest thing she'd given me in years. Which, oddly enough, made it a good ending. A week after that, I saw Trevor. At the post office. He was mailing a stack of thick envelopes that looked suspiciously like audition packets. He had a new jacket. Less sparkle. Still wore 2 scarves. One had fringe. He looked at me and paused. Henry. Trevor with a V. He shifted his weight awkwardly. You look grounded. You look layered. He gave a short, nasal laugh and scratched the back of his neck. I never intended to hurt you. Or make things messy. You choreographed a betrayal in my garage, I said. With lighting. It was pretty clear. He nodded. You know, that performance ended up getting a really strong response online. Someone from a local theater group reached out. Said they'd love to workshop it. That's great, I said. I hope you use the garage set. It's collapsible. He looked down at his packages. Anyway, tell Kelly I said hi. I smiled. Sure. If I ever get back into performance therapy. And that was it. That's how it ended. Not with a meltdown, not with a reconciliation, and not with a ukulele solo. Just me. Back in my small, sharp-cornered home, with a working printer and no one updating a whiteboard labeled intentions. In the end, I didn't find closure through a healing circle or a sponsored retreat. I found it in packing boxes, muted text threads, and a very well-formatted Excel file. I never told anyone the full story, mostly because no one would believe the part about the garage theater. But I kept the chart Kelly sent me. Framed it, actually, not out of sentiment, because it had proper columns and decent spacing. And after everything, that's really all I ever wanted. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel